Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajacharya Astotra Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. So before I begin class, I wanted to make a brief acknowledgement. Yesterday, after a little over 2 weeks of reading, the devotees have completed reading the full Chaitanya Charitamrita, including the Bhaktivedanta purports, especially acknowledging Leela Manjari and her family, Raminta, Sarvopama, Sridharananda, all the devotees who read for us. It's a very glorious thing to do, very nice accomplishment for this yatra, and wanted to acknowledge this achievement. Hopefully we can do something similar for Bhadra Pranim as well. With that being said, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nasta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloka Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulam Gayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Isharam Om Ajnanatimarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutala Shrimate Ramapada Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutala Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Prachare Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pasyata Deshatare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 72, verses 18 and 19. Verse 18 is on the board and we'll chant together. Rajan Vidi Atitin Praptan Artino Duram Agatan Tanna Prayacha Badram Te Yadvayam Kamaya Mahe Rajan Vidi Atitin Praptan Artino Duram Agatan Tannan Prayacha Badram Te Yadvayam Kamaya Mahe Rajan Vidi Atitin Praptan Artino Duram Agatan Tanna Prayacha Badram Te Yadvayam Kamaya Mahe. Please chant. Artino Duram Agatan Rajan, O king, Vidhi, please know. Atitin, guests. Praptan, arrived. Artinaha, desirous of grain. Duram, from far away. Agatan, come. Tat, that. Naha, to us. Prayacha, please grant. Bhadram, all good. Te, unto you. Yat, whatever. Vayam, we. Kamayamahe, are desiring. Translation by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima said, O king, know us to be needy guests who have come to you from afar. We wish all good unto you. Please grant us whatever we desire. Text 19. Kim durmarshar titikshunam, kim akaryam asadubihi, kim nadeyam vadanyanam, kapara samadarshinam. Translation. What can the tolerant not bear? What will the wicked not do? What will the generous not give in charity? And who will those of equal vision see as an outsider? Purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. In the previous verse, Lord Krishna and the two Pandava brothers, Bhima and Arjuna, requested Jarasandha to grant them whatever they asked of him. Here they explain why there is no need for them to specifically desire. The Acharyas comment on this verse as follows. Jarasandha might be thinking, what if you request my son, from whom separation would be intolerable? To this possible objection, Krishna and the Pandavas reply, for a tolerant person, nothing is intolerable. Similarly, Jarasandha could object, what if you ask me to give my body, or my precious jewels and other ornaments, which are meant to be given to my sons, not to ordinary beggars? To this, they reply, for the generous, what is not to be donated in charity? In other words, everything is to be given. Jarasandha might also object that he could be giving charity to his enemies. To this, his guests counter with the statement, Ka paraha samadarshinam. For those with equal vision, who is a stranger? Thus, Krishna and the Pandavas encouraged Jarasandha to simply agree to grant their request without further discussion. I'll read the translation to those two verses again. Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima said, O king, know us to be needy guests who have come to you from afar. We wish all good unto you. Please grant us whatever we desire. What can the tolerant not bear? What will the wicked not do? What will the generous not give in charity? And who will those of equal vision see as an outsider? So, for a couple chapters now, we've been seeing Krishna and his associates planning how to kill Jarasandha, and now they're finally starting to enact their plan. They've gone dressed as Brahmins, a disguise, to beg from Jarasandha. And there's a parallel in this for us. We also, when we come to the temple, in one sense, we're also coming as beggars and needy guests. Usually people who come, they're coming with one of two motives. Either there's the lesser, more mundane motivation, asking for material things, give me a better job, car, house, wife, or whatever. Give us this day our daily bread. We might even be so bold as to ask for liberation. Or we might come for the spiritual reasons. We ask for pure devotional service. We ask for the capacity to nicely perform devotional service. We ask that we learn how to best serve Krishna in a way that's pleasing to him and not a way that's pleasing to us. We can still ask for devotional things without being selfish or needy or materialistic. But if we're asking in a mood that's ultimately for our benefit, then we're not truly asking for the spiritual or devotional reasons. If I ask Krishna for a better job, to buy a nicer car so that I can be more comfortable coming to the temple, and maybe I'll give what's left over from buying that nicer car to the temple, that's still on the mundane platform, even if we try to reason it as, oh well, I'll give a little bit more to the temple or whatever. It's still self-gratificatory. It might not be worded as such, but whatever our true intention is for whatever we're asking for, it doesn't matter how we say it or what we're saying. Krishna knows our heart. We can't fool Krishna with flowery words. Krishna sees our true intentions when we ask for whatever we come and ask for. So at some point we have to realize that we, just like everyone else in this world, are actually searching for happiness, regardless of what we're coming to the temple and asking for, regardless of what we have at home. We're all trying to find happiness in one way, shape, or form. And this is a very broad we being humanity in general. We're all searching for happiness. We might put a devotional filter over it, whereas the people in general don't or won't. But we're still searching for happiness. The materialists are searching everywhere. They're always trying to find the next gadget, person, place, thing, always trying to find the proper concoction of chemicals for a certifiably serene cerebral experience. I'm proud of that one. Thank you for laughing. Whatever they're doing, they're trying to find out the most novel way to manipulate the material energy for their gratification. But as devotees, we should already be convinced that that pursuit is useless. We should be convinced that there is no happiness in the material world. We should know that the closest thing we can get to happiness is a brief cessation of pain and misery. And our four regulative principles are an admission of that. Each of the four regs is a predominant way that we search for happiness in the material world. But when we vow to abstain from these things, we're acknowledging the futility of their nature. And we're simultaneously acknowledging that Krishna is our only shelter. He's our only source of happiness. He is our everything. So instead of coming as materialistic beggars just trying to ask Krishna to be our metaphysical Amazon Prime, delivering us whatever material nonsense that we think is going to make us happy this week. We have to come as spiritual beggars, asking somehow or another to find spiritual happiness. So that, the question can be asked, what are we begging for as devotees? We're begging for nothing less, nothing more than devotional service. That's it. No conditions, no stipulations, no reservations. Srila Vyasadeva really nicely puts it in the Damodar Astakam. He says, O Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benedictions, I don't pray to you for the boon of impersonal liberation, nor the highest liberation of eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon which may be attained by executing the 9 processes of bhakti. O Lord, I simply wish that this form of yours as Bala Gopal in Vrindavan may ever manifest in my heart. For what is the use of any other boon besides this? So we ask for Krishna's pastimes, his name, fame, qualities, glories, to be remembered, because once we are always remembering Krishna, always remembering what he's doing, where he's doing it, and who's he doing it with, everything else doesn't matter. That's how the pure devotee is always thinking. They're always absorbed in Krishna. Prabhupada said that even the cowherd boys are always thinking Krishna, 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 Krishna. But most of us probably aren't pure devotees. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to put in the hard work to get there. That doesn't mean that if we just ask Krishna, please let me always think of you, he's going to just, boom, zap us and make all of our anartas go away. And it's interesting to note that this path of bhakti yoga is not only the means to attain the goal, but the goal itself. All of the other yoga systems are separated from the means are separated from the ends. Usually the goal is some kind of liberation, whether it takes certain austerities or yogic practices or knowledge. The jnani is constantly trying to gain knowledge, but their perfectional stage isn't conceptualized as continuing to gain knowledge. The processes of Ashtanga Yoga aren't there to be practiced once one reaches the stage of Samadhi. There's the means to the end, and then there's the end. But for those of us who would like to practice Bhakti Yoga, what we learn to do is the process which we ultimately want to end up doing, which is causelessly serving Krishna, selflessly serving Krishna. And because bhakti is a process, that means that we have to take part in that process. Our taking part in a limited capacity is how we grow to take part in a full capacity. We might not be able to engage in all of the angas properly at any given time, but it's by the sincere attempt and application that we become purified over time to be able to fully apply permanently each of those different aspects. It takes work, and there's no bypassing, there's no faking or falsifying to attempt making advancement. Maybe for a short period of time we can feign being pure, but eventually there will be some falter. With that being said, we can't discount or disqualify ourselves for not being perfectly pure, or not being as pure as we think we should be, or not being the purest person in the room. There has to be this honest self-assessment and an acknowledgement of how far we've progressed and where we're at. There's multiple books written about the process of bhakti, giving different analogies and elaborations on what advancement in devotional service looks like, so that we can do this properly, so that we can accurately assess where am I at and where am I going. And we have to be very careful not to try to discount or disqualify ourselves for a mundane reason. Bhakti is wholly transcendental. So if we put these material conceptions that qualify or disqualify us, then we're missing out. We can't make the excuse of I'm a woman, or I'm a householder, I'm old, I'm young, I have health problems, I have this, I have that, I don't have this, I don't have that. Bhakti doesn't care about our material limitations, and Mahaprabhu's mercy isn't restricted to anyone for any reason. Mahaprabhu's come to give pure devotional service. He comes to give Krishna prema to everyone, with or without qualification. The only resistance that he runs into, the only problem that Mahaprabhu has, is that not everyone is willing to take pure bhakti from him. It's not that he can't or won't give Krishna prema to everyone. It's that we're unwilling to accept it. So in this way, we're actually our own worst enemy. We're stopping ourselves from receiving the mercy and from attaining the ultimate goal. We choose not to because we have so many misconceptions, false ideas, material attachments, whatever it is that's stopping us. It's stopping us. It's due to misidentification. We still consider ourselves unable for this reason or that reason. It's no different than saying you can only be a devotee if you live in Rogers Park. Too bad, so sad if you live in Evanston, and it must really suck to live in Aurora, because you can only be a devotee if you live in Rogers Park. Or you can only come to the temple if you drive a Honda. Tesla owners, be warned. We don't allow anything other than Hondas. Considering our material position to be a limitation from participating in the process of devotional service is no different than saying you can only drive on Interstate 90 if you have a green Toyota. It's made up. I-90 is there for everyone to use, whether you're in a car, truck, bus, semi, SUV, coupe, motorcycle, dump truck, rickshaw. As long as you're not on a bicycle, you can get on Interstate 90 and go about your day. But if we're saying I can't get on I-90 because my car's the wrong color, but you have the correct colored car, so you go ahead, it's the same thing as saying I can't fully practice bhakti because I'm a householder, You're a brahmachari, so it's different for you. No, that's your own reservation holding you back, and I have my own reservations holding me back. It doesn't matter that I'm a brahmachari. It doesn't matter if I'm a brahmachari or a householder or a sannyasi or a pilak. I'm the only thing stopping me from practicing bhakti, and this is an honest admission. I'm the only thing that stops me. We are always the only thing that ever stops ourselves from practicing. But neither you nor I should or can allow the nonsense of anartha blaming to keep us from practicing bhakti. The Bhagavatam says, every morning we chant this verse, Nasta Praesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloka Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. We chant this, but we rarely give the definitions or the meaning of this verse. But what it's saying is we have these abhadreshu, these troublesome reservations. But by Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, those troublesome things become snasta prayesh, are almost completely destroyed. And by that regular Bhagavat Seva, by regular service to Bhagavan, to Krishna, Bhaktir Bhavati, Bhakti becomes established in the heart as Naishtaki, irrevocable. And by Bhakti being in the heart irrevocably, whatever is still there, because it doesn't destroy everything, it destroys it almost to nil is the exact word for word translation. So whatever little tinges remain become insignificant because we're practicing bhakti. And the Bhagavat Sevaya in this age is Harinam Sankirtan. Mahaprabhu tells us as much in the verse Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Eva Kevalam. And in that same Chaitanya Charitamrita that says the famous Harinam verse, Krishnadas Kaviraj tells us over and over again that I have serious health problems and I can leave my body at any moment. But he doesn't stop writing. He doesn't give up his duty. He doesn't give up his service. He continues writing with health failing in such a way that most of us can't comprehend, to complete a task in living conditions that we can't fathom, in such a way that's inconceivably difficult by today's standards. That's to say, he was not living in a house or hut that's up to this 21st century standard. He didn't have, the access to medical doctors in such a way that we did. The Goswamis of that time usually resided under a different tree every night. And as he's writing, he doesn't have a MacBook. He doesn't even have a Dell. He doesn't even have a typewriter. He has leaves to scratch onto in a language that's only mildly conducive to scratching onto leaves. It's austere, to put it lightly. And in the same way, Srila Prabhupada continued his service, his duty, his mission, up until his last breath. He was in excruciating pain. He talks about the pain that he was in. And upon leaving his body, some doctors assessed that he had some incredibly serious health problems that should have separated him from his body long before they did. He was unable to eat or drink. He was unable to sit up under his own power. He was incapable of speaking more than a couple words, but he still managed to not only continue his translation work, but he also continued to manage the entire ISKCON society, even though he was about to leave his body. The translation work is a lot. The managing of ISKCON in the way that he managed it is a lot. And even with these two monumental tasks, he also managed to show us how to die perfectly. Up until his re-entrance into his Nitya Leela, he showed us exactly how a devotee is to live and how a devotee is to leave. But due to our contaminated and foolish thinking, we think that our temporary material situations are stopping us from our true duties as devotees. It's an arrogant thing to think in this way. It's a bold and dangerous conclusion to disqualify ourselves from that which the Supreme Lord has already deemed freely available by his own causeless mercy. Srila Lochandas Thakur describes this in his book Damali, in the bhajan Parama Karuna. He says, "My dear brother, I request that you just worship Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda with firm conviction and faith. If one wants to be Krishna conscious by this process, one has to give up his engagement in sense gratification. One has to simply chant Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, without any motive." That's the essence of our Krishna consciousness movement. We chant Krishna's name, and we try to convince others to do the same. Narottama Das explains in Prarthana that Golokera Premadan Harinam Sankirtan, that the wealth of Goloka, Prema, has come down to this earth as the Hare Krishna movement, as the Harinam Sankirtan movement. His lamentation is, I've spent my life uselessly. I've obtained a human birth, and having not worshipped Radha and Krishna, I've knowingly drunk poison. Why did my attachment for that chanting never come about? Day and night my heart burns for the fire of the poison, burns from the fire of the poison of worldly existence, and I have not taken the means to relieve it. Very plain in this bhajan. The holy name is delivered. The holy name delivered all those souls who were lowly and wretched. The two sinners, Jagai and Madai, are evidence of this. But somehow we keep disconnecting ourselves from the opportunity to get mercy. We keep inventing nonsense excuses when the bottom line, the actual reason is we don't want to give up our anartas. We don't want to give up our attachments. And it's not always so easy to give up anartas and attachments. But the process is right in front of us. Perfection is to always chant. And the steps to get to perfection is to always chant. As soon as we stop giving ourselves these false reasons of I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm the other, I have an unfortunate birth, I have these anartas, I'm in bad health or a household, whatever it is, we then start to open ourselves up to the mercy. But until we stop the excuses, until we honestly own up to our own lack of desire, like the acharyas are showing us, regardless of the fact that it isn't quite so literal for them, then we don't actually begin the effacing process to remove the anartas. The other side of this is that we can also see how others are searching for happiness. Like I said earlier, we know happiness doesn't lie in material things, so we vow to follow the 4 regulative principles of freedom. But the people in general don't know this. They have no concept. And when they hear 4 regulative principles of freedom, they think 4 rules that take away everything that actually makes me happy. But they don't actually know what happiness is. Not just from not having engaged in devotional service, but through the confusing cessation of pain for actual happiness. This leads one down the rabbit hole of thinking that by some permutation of material energy, happiness can be found. But we know this, there's no permutation, there's no situation that will cause actual material happiness. It's a paradox, it's a fallacy. Material happiness doesn't exist. Even amongst the pseudo-religious and the pseudo-pious materialists, the conception remains that there's a permissible level of enjoyment here. A lot of them understand that there's higher enjoyment in their conception of heaven, but they think, yeah, we can enjoy a little bit here too, and then we go and enjoy a lot more in heaven. This is very clearly a misconception. It sounds, to the devotees' ears, it doesn't just sound bizarre to hear that you enjoy here and then you enjoy even more in the heavenly abode. We know that it's just factually wrong. Even the heavenly planets, those who go there eventually return, Krishna says in the Gita. So we know that the materialists don't actually know what happiness is, but they still don't know that, and they're so cripplingly blinded by the material energy that they think this quote-unquote material happiness, it's actually temporary, is the end-all be-all. And as people with higher knowledge, it is our duty to try to help them understand the bigger picture. Very easily, they can understand that material happiness is temporary, and that's our open door to start explaining the philosophy that not only is it temporary, it's false. We aren't off the hook simply by practicing bhakti ourselves. It's a requirement from Mahaprabhu to spread this movement to every town and village. And we can't just qualify or disqualify ourselves for some nonsense reason, and so we also can't qualify or disqualify others. Truth is transcendental. This philosophy is transcendental. This practice is transcendental. Transcendental means anyone can do it. There's plenty of apasampradayas, offenders, who are stuck on the bodily conception of life, thinking that this process is limited to a certain race of people or a certain caste of people, people from a certain country or of a certain creed, of a certain skin color. They foolishly believe that anyone who isn't like them can't do what they're doing. And that means not only are they unintelligent and lack realization of the truth, but they're actually not practicing bhakti like they think they are. The very simple truth is that devotional service to Krishna can be executed by anyone, regardless of whatever quote-unquote material disqualifications are there. Particularly, this is true when one occupies a human body. So assuming you're a human body, there is actually no disqualification. There's certainly nobody that's more disqualified than Jagai and Madai. It says they've committed every sin. And I tried to commit every sin and I couldn't. And I know lots of other people who have tried to do the same and couldn't. So that means we're not even as qualified to be unqualified as Jagai and Madai. So if we know this, if we understand this, then we can, at least theoretically, we can try to understand that as the Krishna consciousness movement, as the members of the Krishna consciousness movement, we are qualified to practice. We are qualified to receive the mercy. And because we're qualified, we're also duty-bound to Mahaprabhu to spread this movement as far as possible. There are so many millions of people that we have as neighbors that have never heard Krishna's name. There's 9.5 million people in the greater Chicagoland area, and not even 0.002%, that's 0.002%, less than that, will show up for the Sunday feast. Even within Rogers Park, there's 54,000 people, and not even 1% will show up for the Sunday feast. We might have had 0.5% here, maybe 0.75% for Gaur Purnim. That's probably the second biggest holiday of the year. And that's just our Rogers Park. And that's not accounting for that a lot of people that came don't even live in Rogers Park. And this means that we're not doing our part. It means that we're not reading, means that we're not taking Prabhupada seriously. It means that we're not taking Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami seriously. It means that we're not taking Mahaprabhu seriously. If we really seriously read, if we seriously listen, if we seriously try to understand, then naturally we'll try to do within our capacity all that we can do to try to reach out to others. Because Nitai Gauranga are Parama Karuna, they are the most merciful. That means anyone who is the devotee of Parama Karuna Nitai Gaurachandra are also the most merciful. That mercy is expressed by trying to share Krishna's name with everyone. And the best thing that a lot of devotees end up doing. More and more we hear the senior devotees talking about this, that the best that a lot of people do is dovetailing their laziness, which means finding the easiest people to preach to and not challenging ourselves to step out of that comfort zone of the people that we find most easy to talk to. That's for a preacher like me. I often find myself, there's a group of people, there's a certain demographic that I find easy to talk to, and I rarely find myself encouraged to step outside of that. But that's laziness. That is saying, well, I know where I get the result, and I'm not really willing to try to get result anywhere else, because what if I can't, or what if I don't, what if it's uncomfortable? It's laziness, plain and simple. We have to fix the microphone stand. We have to immediately get rid of this idea that we're unqualified. We have to get rid of the idea that we're unqualified to preach. It's a lie that we tell ourselves, which traps us from actually making serious advancement. If we keep pigeonholing our preaching, we keep pigeonholing ourselves from making advancement. If we keep pigeonholing ourselves from making advancement, we keep pigeonholing ourselves into holding on to the anarthas that keep us in this not so comfortable state. It's completely true that it's better if a true Madhyamadikari or an Uttamadikari preaches. That's abundantly obvious. But that's also what we have book distribution for. In the early days of the Krishna consciousness movement, it was not as common to find senior and advanced devotees. Usually a senior devotee had been around for maybe a year or 2 years. And somehow the preaching was successful. That's because it was simple. Prabhupada's books. You give Prabhupada's books. You speak from Prabhupada's books. You repeat Prabhupada's books. You repeat Prabhupada's lectures. Because what can any of us say that is more realized or more advanced or more pure or more fill in the blank than a pure devotee? Probably not much. Not in terms of bhakti, at least. So that's why Srila Prabhupada has instructed that we distribute books on their own merit. This means that we just have to know a couple of points about the book and repeat those points to the person, and that's it. And in this day and age, it's become so simple. There's videos and lectures and books about distributing books, abundant. It's a very simple thing. But it seems like we've reached a point of pandemic in the Hare Krishna movement where there's not a very strong emphasis on reading. Usually in brahmachari ashrams, we find that the bare minimum reading is an hour a day. And when we have brahmacharis that follow that, usually we have some pretty blissful brahmacharis. But that standard isn't there broadly. It's not terribly common, and that's why I was so excited to hear that devotees were reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita and that they were going to finish it, whatever it takes, they're going to finish it. Because this is such an important book and such an important activity for devotees. But by and large, reading is not a very popular thing. Even devotees complain, who's buying books anymore? Lots of people are buying books. Actually, we're distributing more books now in numbers than previously. It's grown exponentially, but the amount of people in the Krishna consciousness movement has actually grown exponentially as well. The people in general in the world have grown exponentially, but even mundane researchers have noticed that even though it's the digital age and there's a rise in people reading on the phone and audiobooks and all of this, people still purchase books at a rate that would actually be somewhat astounding when you think, oh, it's all online, it's all digital. People are still buying books just from bookstores, regardless of the fact that most brick and mortar stores are struggling. People still buy books, but we're not selling them nearly at the pace that we were previously. So this is one of our major methods of purification, is reading and distributing books in whatever capacity that we can. The society is not built the way it was previously. But that doesn't mean that the method of purification has changed. The society wasn't built the same way it was in Prabhupada's time as it was in the time of Mahaprabhu. Things have changed. But that doesn't mean that the purification changes. We still have to actively take part in our own purification. And by that, actively taking part in our own purification, then what do you know, we get purified. Interesting concept. So it's our duty as beggars, begging for Krishna's mercy, to go and try to help the foolish beggars who are begging the material energy for a little bit of enjoyment. Just as Krishna and Arjuna and Bhima are begging, and they're removing any disqualifications of what should be given when we beg for mercy, when we beg for engagement. There's also no disqualification for our receiving that mercy, aside from our unwillingness to accept it. So, with that, if there's any questions or comments, we can take those.
The point you were raising of, in a dutiful way, that one is bringing the message of Krishna consciousness to others. Um, and your expansion on that point by saying that you found yourself not wanting to go outside a certain demographic to do that activity. I thought it's very interesting because, from my perspective, it seems a very positive thing to restrict oneself in some sense, because naturally there's an affinity for those of similar cultural background, and one actually understands the mindset better rather than if one were to be attempting to convey such a message to persons of a different demographic where one may not be so familiar with the mindset and know the intricacies of how to deliver such a delicate message, taking into account different cultural norms or a different way of mental processing. So I just want to comment that, just in processing what you were saying.
It's interesting, though, that if Srila Prabhupada hadn't gone outside of those boundaries, then he probably wouldn't have made it to 26 Second Avenue. But even if he had somehow made it to 26 Second Avenue and established that center, the West Coast was a totally different animal. So the movement probably wouldn't have expanded past New York. It would have stayed in that little cloister that it was in, and when that particular period of time died out, then so the movement also would have. But the movement was taken to San Francisco, and from San Francisco to so many other places, because devotees were willing to do two things. They were willing to preach. Prabhupada was always, if he would meet someone foreign, he would encourage them to preach to their countrymen. But there was also devotees willing to go outside of their comfort zone. Prabhupada was willing to go outside of his comfort zone and come to America. Hridayananda Goswami was willing to go outside of his comfort zone and preach in South America. Brahmananda and Gargamuni were willing to go outside of their comfort zone and preach in Africa, and so on and so forth. And it takes both. It can't be one or the other. But when we only do one or the other, then we're missing out on half of the task and purpose. If we only stick to X demographic, then Y and Z demographic are missing out. When to speak of A, B, and C demographic, we have to be willing to be uncomfortable for Krishna. And we also have to do the comfortable thing. It can't be one or the other. But I've noticed such a tendency to just stay in the confines. And I'm not just talking about within myself, and I'm not just talking about the movement in general, but both the micro and the macro. We've gotten to a point where there's a tendency to stay in what's comfortable. We preach to the people that we're comfortable preaching to. And too bad, so sad for everybody else, because this is all I'm comfortable doing. So that's at the very least, it's my encouragement to myself to get off my lazy backside and do the things that are uncomfortable. And also hopefully a slightly more gentle encouragement to the other devotees to do the same. Shamsundar Prabhu, one of Prabhupada's senior disciples, said that the movement in the early days ran on the principle that everybody believed that if we stick our neck out for Krishna, he has to reciprocate. And that's how they were able to do so many extraordinary and astronomical things. And it doesn't feel so much like people are willing to stick their neck out for Krishna anymore. So that's my, I guess that's my prerogative then, is to start sticking my neck out for Krishna. And anybody else that's bold enough, brave enough, willing enough to do it, then they can do it too. Any other questions? We've got just a couple minutes left.
I think you did an excellent job. When you say comfort zone, are you actually feeling that you yourself have somehow lost energy because of boundaries that you can't necessarily control?
Trying to make sure I understand the question.
Shall I clarify? You were speaking in regards to how the movement, just recently, the end, how the movement, would have flourished or not have flourished if people didn't take certain initiatives. And currently, we have this big neighborhood and we have the huge Chicago, but the people, they're not preaching to the ones that need it the most, or the ones that they know that are in complete opposition to the mindset. They don't necessarily want to tackle that. So when we have our celebrations or what have you, the numbers from who Prabhupada wanted us to reach was, we come to the Western world and it's worldwide. So Rogers Park, for example, is almost every ethnic group that's on the planet is here. So we should see it here, and then we would market, outside or besides postings within the temple. So I was just feeling that, have you felt restrictions because of demographics and culture and titles?
No, all of my restrictions are self-imposed. I think I'm limited in this way or that way, or I can't do this because of that, or it's all a head game, because ultimately it doesn't, nothing else matters. The only thing that matters is my willingness to go out and do the damn yajna. That's what it comes down to. Do I have the willingness to go out and do the damn yajna or not? And if I do, great. And if I don't have the willingness, then it doesn't get done, and it's my own fault for not doing it. And ultimately, I'm not the one who pays the price. It's everybody who doesn't get to hear the message of Krishna consciousness, to be relieved of the cycle of birth and death. The way I see it is, if I'm not going out and doing the missionary activity, I have no one to blame but myself. And the biggest loser isn't myself. Certainly I lose too, because I don't get the purification of going out and doing it. But it's all the people who could have heard about Krishna and taken up devotional service, but didn't, because I didn't feel like doing something. for whatever reason it is. That's ultimately, at the end of the day, we can be our own worst enemy in that way. So this is my encouragement for everybody to stop being their own worst enemy. And chant Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.